Okay, so you want to buy a golf course. Sounds like a dream. Rich retirees paying $5,000 annual memberships. Weekend tee times at $200 a round. Weddings booked at $15,000 per event. Predictable revenue, tangible asset. A business that practically runs itself. Except golf courses close every month. Banks won't lend on them. Developers can't give them away. The math looks bulletproof. Membership dues, greens fees, food and beverage, corporate outings. But something in the gap between revenue projections and reality destroys capital with alarming consistency. Property taxes on 150 acres. Water bills that eclipse most restaurants. A 40-person grounds crew working year-round. Let's break down why the model never works. If forensic breakdowns like this help you see through the math, subscribe. New deep dive every week. Let's start with what it costs to get in. Golf courses don't list on Zillow with clean comps. The asking price depends on geography, condition, and how desperate the seller is. That desperation is usually the most reliable signal you'll get. A 9-hole municipal course in rural Pennsylvania might list for $500,000. 18 holes in suburban North Carolina, distressed but functional, will run $2 to $5 million. A private club in Scottsdale with clubhouse, pool, and tennis courts starts at $15 million. Premium resort courses near metro areas, Hilton Head, Naples, demand $30 to $50 million. Pebble Beach sold for over $800 million. But that's an outlier tied to brand and tourism infrastructure you'll never replicate. The term you'll hear constantly is motivated seller. That's industry code. Translation: this property is bleeding cash, I can't service the debt, and I need out before the bank forecloses. If the seller is motivated, you're inheriting a problem. If they're not motivated, you're overpaying. Here's what the listing price doesn't include. Every golf course older than 10 years carries a deferred maintenance backlog. Greens need resurfacing every 12 to 15 years. Cost: $80,000 to $150,000 per green. 18 greens means $1.5 to $2 million just to make the pitting surfaces playable. If fairway irrigation systems fail after 20 years, replacement cost for a full 18-hole system runs $1.2 to $2 million depending on acreage and water source complexity. The clubhouse roof leaks. The HVAC system is original to 1987. The cart fleet averages 12 years old. Each new cart costs $8,000. You need 40 carts minimum for weekend volume. That's $320,000 if you replace them all at once. Then there are the costs nobody mentions until you're in due diligence. Environmental site assessments are mandatory in most states. Expect $30,000 to $50,000 for Phase 1 and Phase 2 if there's any soil contamination from decades of pesticide use. Wetland mitigation can add another $100,000 to $500,000 if your course encroaches on protected areas or if you need to meet new EPA stormwater runoff standards. Zoning and permitting vary wildly. Some towns let you operate as is. Others require you to bring the entire property up to current commercial building codes before issuing an occupancy permit. Fire suppression upgrades, ADA accessibility retrofits, septic system replacements. Budget $200,000 to $800,000 if the local jurisdiction decides to enforce strictly. Geography determines your operating cost structure and revenue ceiling. An Arizona course pays $60,000 to $80,000 per month in water bills during summer. Irrigation pulls from municipal sources at commercial rates. Desert courses need constant watering to keep Bermuda grass alive in 110-degree heat. A North Carolina course with abundant rainfall pays $6,000 to $10,000 per month, but Arizona offers 320 playable days per year. North Carolina offers 180 to 200 depending on winter weather. You're trading water costs for revenue days. Florida and California face water use restrictions that tighten every few years. California's State Water Resources Control Board cut irrigation allocations by 25% in 2022 and 2023 for non-essential commercial use. If you're in a drought-prone region, your operating assumptions disintegrate the moment regulators turn the valve. Now, let's talk about how you pay for this. Banks will not lend on golf courses. Full stop. Commercial real estate lenders classify them as special use properties with limited resale markets and high operational risk. If you default, the bank can't flip it easily. It's not an apartment building. It's 150 acres of grass that costs $100,000 a month to maintain even when closed. Your financing options are cash or seller financing. If the seller is motivated enough, they'll hold the note at 6% to 8% interest over 7 to 10 years. You'll put 30% to 40% down. That means if you're buying a $10 million course, you need $3 to $4 million in cash at closing. You'll owe $60,000 to $70,000 per month in debt service on top of all operating costs before you host a single round. You sign the purchase agreement. You close. Day one, you've spent $8 million to $12 million, depending on size and location. You haven't opened the doors. You haven't collected a membership fee. You haven't hosted a wedding or sold a logo ball in the pro shop. The greens still need resurfacing. The irrigation system is on borrowed time. Sounds great? Here's how the revenue model is supposed to work. The model has 4 pillars: membership dues, greens fees, pro shop sales, food and beverage. Each one looks bulletproof in isolation. Start with membership dues. A mid-tier private club charges $5,000 to $8,000 per year per member. You need 250 to 350 members to fill weekend tea times without overcrowding. Let's use 300 members at $5,000 each. That's $1.5 million in annual recurring revenue. Members pay quarterly or annually. It's predictable, contracted, and sticky. Churn runs 10% to 15% per year in a stable club. Next, greens fees. Even private clubs open tea times to non-members during weekday mornings to fill capacity. Public and semi-private courses depend on greens fees as their primary revenue source. A decent suburban course charges $50 to $80 per round on weekdays, $80 to $120 on weekends. Premium courses in resort markets hit $150 to $250. Assume 10,000 rounds per year. That's about 30 rounds per day average, factoring in weather closures and off-season dips. At an average fee of $60 per round, you're generating $600,000 annually. If you push volume to 12,000 rounds, an average fee to $70, you're at $840,000. The constraint is pace of play. 18 holes takes 4 to 5 hours. You can't pack more than 8 to 10 foursomes per day without creating backups that drive customers away. Pro shop revenue comes from apparel, equipment, and logo merchandise. A well-run shop generates $150,000 to $300,000 per year, depending on membership size. Margins are thin, 30% to 40%, because you're competing with online retailers. Food and beverage is the wild card. A clubhouse restaurant and bar can generate $300,000 to $600,000 annually if you're doing weekend brunch, post-round drinks, and private event catering. But F&B is operationally complex. You need a licensed kitchen, health inspections, liability insurance, and staff who don't overlap with grounds crew. Many clubs outsource F&B to a third-party operator and take a percentage of gross sales instead of running it in-house. Add it up. Membership dues, $1.5 million. Greens fees, $600,000. Pro shop, $200,000. F&B, $400,000. Total gross revenue, $2.7 million per year. Now, subtract costs. Property taxes on 150 acres in a suburban area run $80,000 to $150,000 per year. Insurance, general liability, property, flood, workers' comp adds another $60,000 to $100,000. Debt service on a $6 million note at 7% interest is $420,000 per year. Those are your fixed costs. Total, roughly $700,000 annually before you mow a single fairway. Variable costs are where the model gets fragile. Grounds crew labor is your largest line item. You need a superintendent, 3 to 5 assistant groundskeepers, and seasonal staff for mowing, trimming, and trash collection. Payroll runs $600,000 to $900,000 per year. Water and irrigation cost $80,000 to $500,000 annually, depending on geography. Fertilizer, pesticides, and soil amendments add another $60,000 to $100,000. Equipment maintenance and fuel for mowers, aerators, and utility vehicles cost $40,000 to $70,000. Cart maintenance and replacement reserves add $30,000. Total variable costs, $900,000 to $1.6 million per year. Run the math. Gross revenue, $2.7 million. Fixed costs, $700,000. Variable costs, $1.2 million. Net operating income, $800,000 per year. That sounds good until you remember you spent $10 million acquiring and upgrading the property. At $800,000 per year, break-even takes 12.5 years. If you financed part of the purchase and you're paying $420,000 in annual debt service, your true cash profit drops to $380,000 per year. Break-even stretches to 26 years. Private equity firms used to buy distressed courses, inject $2 to $3 million in cosmetic upgrades, new clubhouse finishes, cart fleet, re-turfed greens, and flip them in 5 to 7 years to lifestyle buyers. The model worked when real estate was appreciating 6% to 8% annually, and membership demand was stable. That window closed around 2008 and hasn't reopened. The model is bulletproof. Everything around the model is chaos. Meet Donald Trump and Trump National Doral in Miami. Purchased in 2012 for $150 million. The resort includes 4 golf courses, a spa, and 700 rooms. Revenue in 2013 hit $50 million. By 2016, revenue had collapsed to $15 million. The resort refinanced in 2021 at 13% interest through a non-bank lender after traditional lenders refused. The Doral collapse wasn't a management failure. It was a preview of every external shock the model can't absorb. Weather destroys you slowly, then suddenly. A drought in year 3 turns fairways brown. Members complain. You increase watering. Your monthly water bill jumps from $40,000 to $70,000. The grass stays marginal. 20 members don't renew. You've lost $100,000 in annual dues and added $360,000 in water costs. A flood closes the course for 6 weeks. You lose $300,000 in greens fees and event revenue. Insurance covers property damage, but not business interruption unless you paid for that rider, which costs $40,000 per year, and most owners skip. The demographic collapse is structural and irreversible. The average American golfer is 54 years old. Participation rates peaked in 2005 at 30 million players and dropped to 24 million by 2020. Millennials don't golf. A round takes 4.5 hours. They prefer boutique fitness classes that deliver endorphin hits in 45 minutes. Older golfers are your core customer, but they're aging out faster than you can replace them. A member who joins at age 50 plays for 10 to 15 years, then stops due to mobility or health. You need to replace 10% to 15% of your membership base every year just to stay flat. Acquisition cost per new member runs $1,500 to $3,000 in marketing, tours, and referral incentives. You're spending $60,000 to $90,000 annually to run in place. Operational bleed comes from costs you didn't model accurately. Pesticide and fertilizer expenses fluctuate with EPA regulations. New restrictions on nitrogen runoff require you to switch to slower-release organic fertilizers that cost 40% more. Fungicide treatments for greens cost $15,000 per application. You'll apply 3 to 5 times per year. That's $75,000 you didn't budget. Mowing crew overtime spikes in spring and summer. Grass grows faster in heat. You're mowing fairways every other day instead of twice per week. Over time, wages add $8,000 per month from April through September. Regulatory tightening accelerates every year. California cut irrigation allocations for non-essential commercial use by 40% in 2022. Courses in Los Angeles and San Diego either paid penalties of $10,000 per month or replanted greens with drought-resistant turf at $500,000 per course. Florida tightened fertilizer application windows to protect coastal water quality. Violations carry $15,000 fines per incident. The real estate paradox kills you, even if everything else works. Your 150 acres in a growing suburban market is worth more as housing than as a golf course. Developers will offer $30 million for land you bought for $10 million. That's $200,000 per acre. They'll build 200 single-family homes at $400,000 each and gross $80 million. Net profit after construction costs, $20 to $25 million. Your members know this math. A faction will push for a buyout. They want their share of the land value. The club votes. If 60% agree, you're forced to sell or buy them out at appraised value. You don't have $18 million in cash. Membership churn accelerates when a nearby competitor cuts prices. A municipal course 5 miles away drops weekend greens fees from $80 to $50 to steal volume. You lose 15% of your non-member rounds overnight. You either match the price cut and lose $180,000 in annual revenue, or you hold pricing and lose $240,000 in volume. Both options bleed you. The Muni course wins because they're subsidized by taxpayers and don't need to break even. Here's the final tally. Scenario 1. Optimistic. You retain 300 members. You host 12,000 rounds per year. Food and beverage hits $400,000. No disasters. Break even in year 9. Your internal rate of return over 15 years is 5.2%. You'd have earned the same return in an intermediate-term bond fund without spending a decade negotiating with groundskeepers. Scenario 2. Realistic. Member churn runs 15% annually. Rounds decay to 8,000 by year. 5 as competition intensifies and demographics thin. Maintenance backlog reemerges in year 7. Cumulative loss after 10 years, $3.8 million. Scenario 3. Nightmare. Drought in year 3. Revenue drops 40%. You sell to a developer for $6 million. You're in for $10 million. Net loss, $4 million plus opportunity cost. That same $10 million in an S&P 500 index fund in 2015 would be worth $22 million in 2025. You'd have spent the decade watching compound interest instead of arguing about fungicide application schedules. Who actually succeeds? Legacy family clubs. They inherited the land. Cost basis is 0. Labor is family members or loyal locals at below-market wages. New buyers? Almost never. The house always wins. In this case, the house is the real estate developer who buys your course for 40 cents on the dollar and builds 200 townhomes. You walk away with a tax loss and a story about the time you thought owning a golf course was a good idea.